our next conversation, which is called On Stage and Off Stage, how AI and virtual production intersect. It's moderated by Barbara Marshall. Barbara is the global media and entertainment industry lead at HP. That's this company which is building computers for longer than I'm alive, and has spent time in organizations as BBC, Autodesk, Epic Games, you name it. So the perfect person to have a conversation with this illustrious group of people. We have Marina Acuna Acosta, who is Senior Vice President, Global Virtual Production and On-Set Services for Technicolor. We have Evan Clark, who is leading virtual production developer and currently senior systems engineer at Zerospace. We have Darren Friedman, who is managing partner at Planet X. If I'm just connecting the dots, I'm very heavily assuming that's the Planet X Jean-Michel is standing in. We have Jim Geduldig, I had the pleasure of working with in the past, who is virtual production supervisor and visual effects supervisor and cinematographer, and always at the forefront of innovation and development in digital production. And he's the founder of Spaceboy Labs. And last but not least, we have Matt Workman, who is a virtual production developer and content creator, and has created a cinematography database, which I have to look into because I didn't know this existed. So I'm going to hand it over to Barbara. Thank you so much for all of you to be here, and take it away.
Thank you, Philip. Great to be back. And yep, I think we're going to continue the conversation that started just now with the NVIDIA NANT Studios folk. Just a point of correction, Evan Clark from Zerospace, he's the head of research engineering. And Mariana is Mariana. So thank you, guys and girls, for joining us for this conversation. I want to sort of kick it off by saying that virtual production, I think for most people, is much more than LED walls and in-camera visual effects. It's also much more than high-end feature film and drama. And so I'd like us to explore the full gamut of virtual production. And I'm delighted to be joined by these leading names, and across the board, from TV, film, corporate, commercials, fashion. And so let's talk about how virtual production and AI are intersecting. And indeed, are they? Not necessarily a given. So let's go around the table, around the room, around the world, and start with beyond LED walls and ICV effects. What does virtual production look like to you in your world, in your company, in the work that you do? And I'm going to let's start with ladies, Mariana, and obviously in-camera visual effects is a big part of what you do, but is it the only part?
No, absolutely not. And thank you for the name correction, Barbara. I appreciate that. No, so here at Technicolor, because I oversee all the different brands, so it's advertising and it's also animation, games, as well as film and episodic. This obviously entails, hybrid production. It includes digital twins. It includes performance capture and facial capture, and working together with R&D really, really closely. And so, yeah, it's everything. It's not just the wall, right? Like the wall is just a part of virtual production. So what we do a lot of as well is test different workflows, right? As well as different AI tools, for example, Wonder Dynamics or Move AI or Kubrick. And because we can do that at a small scale and use already, the amazing talent that we have across the visualization teams from both the mill and MPC, and they have different workflows because one's for advertising and the others maybe for film or episodic. Then we're able to really do a lot of testing so that we're sure that that once you invest in a certain technology, that first it can be deployed at scale, and then what does that mean? from a technology standpoint, and really what benefits is it, the cost analysis and the efficiencies and the efficiency analysis that you're going to have, as well as testing things, for example, with micros. What is it? What does it mean to be, animating in the engine? And should we be using a lot more mocap, or maybe just rely a lot more on the animators and the tools and the pipeline that we already have? And then I'll pass it on.
Thanks, Mariana. Jim, let's go to you next.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's the diverse type of projects that are coming both into studios all the way down to independent these days, is being able to see a lot of different tools and different approaches being used, from large scale feature films all the way down to like independent films and even independent game studios using real-time engines and virtual production techniques between motion capture, facial capture, and kind of mashing or kit bashing all of these different styles and modalities. And being that AI and machine learning has had a lot of advancements, especially if you look at the past 2 years alone, a lot of new methodologies or previous methodologies are being tweaked to fit these different genres, whether if you're working on experiential and live events all the way through to broadcast to episodic and featured film, there's always aspects of virtual production that can fit and at different budget. So that's the one thing too. I think virtual production falls in this bucket of like, oh, it's really expensive, it's very technical, and you need either a major studio backing or access to the teams, which in some cases is true, but I don't think there's any aspect of virtual production really that is a blocker from either, startups or independent levels. Like, everybody has access to a lot of the tools that are now democratizing more, which is great because we're getting different stories, we're getting different, IP created out there between the use of AI and virtual production. So it's a really cool space to be in because the technology is moving very fast, but then the collaboration is also starting to pick up in terms of people being able to use virtual production techniques with new tools.
So picking up on that collaboration piece, Matt, I recall very early on when you and I first started working together, I was fascinated with how you were working remotely and in virtual space, obviously at the beginning of the pandemic, but 3 years on, can you talk to us a little bit about how you work and what's virtual about it?
I have actually mastered virtual production. Behind me is an LED wall. You probably all thought I'm just kidding, but like, so I feel like these days I like the idea of bringing like the fun parts of virtual production like to more people. And I make a game called Cinetracer. It's made in Unreal Engine 5, and it's pretty much like a digital double of like a film set. And we would do that like in a game. It might even go as far as to be like extra meta to have like a video game version of an LED wall volume, so it's like a virtual set. And with Epic Games coming out with UEFN for Fortnite, I put an LED wall in a Fortnite map that was made accessible to a lot of people. And I work a lot with motion capture with Vicon, and being able to do motion capture and bringing that into the games I make, into like different experiences. And I really like the idea of motion capture live these days, like the concept of doing like a live mocap into UEFN or into other platforms. And so I've definitely done a bit of LED work these days, but a lot of video game kind of versions of it, and trying to bring that to like as many filmmakers as possible.
So it sounds like, Matt, you're doing virtual production within virtual production. You're doing a double layer.
It's hard to
Wow.
explain to my parents what it is that's going on. Yes, certainly.
A virtual LED wall for a virtual production. Okay. Now you mentioned the commercial side of things and the other use cases. So that brings me to, let's start with Evan, and then we'll go to you, Darren. You're both running studios, and I know you have quite a variety of customers. So Evan, can you talk a little bit about what virtual production means to you?
Yeah, I think it's really looking at the future of the industry as a tool. taking all these types of innovations and technologies and understanding how they can be used to benefit a workflow and overall take what we see as production to, not only a new level, but a level where we're able to achieve things faster and better than we previously could. And the amazing thing about this growing trend of virtual production is just the level of accessibility. A number of our team members have come from backgrounds that were not at all related to anything near film. And yet here we are, running a virtual production studio with everything from volumetric to motion capture to ICVFX to projection to animation to VAD under one roof. And that's all because everyone took the time and picked up the tools and saw this as kind of the next generation of production that they could really, create for their art form.
Yeah, and Evan, you make an important point about the variety of backgrounds. I know not least your own, from a medical research background to where you are now. So, Darren, you're just up the road from Zero Space, and again, I think you have quite a variety of customers, don't you?
Yes, our studio, I'd say, is probably one of the smaller, fully built out virtual production studios. And we initially were green screen when we started a few years ago. Earlier this year, we were fortunate enough to be able to put in an LED volume. And what we're really focused on is, I think someone mentioned before, really the democratization of virtual production, how we can bring these amazing tools that are used, Disney, Marvel movies, to much smaller productions, whether it's commercials, short films, music videos. So using those tools allows us to have a much smaller crew size and allows us to have smaller budgets, but still bring the amazing creative tools to the different projects that we're fortunate enough to work on. And for us, it's a combination of virtual production, meaning like what we're doing today. Jean-Michel's downstairs from me right now in front of our LED volume. So we do a lot of live events like that, but also we do productions with no camera. For some TV programs we're working on in terms of using Unreal as part of the workflow to create animations. Most recently, we're working on a History Channel series, and then also for live events, a new show that's coming out in the spring called Zavatar that I'll be talking about on Wednesday, uses real-time avatars, and we premiered that with support of HP at the Cannes Film Festival earlier this year. Again, using virtual production, but for a live event demonstrating real-time production. So I think the tools are just growing so quickly, and we are just starting to get into the mocap side of things too, which is very exciting to see how we can bring that to even lower budget music videos, productions that don't have the six-figure budgets, but they can still leverage that technology. So it's a really exciting time for us.
And so Darren, let's just drill down a bit though. When you talk about the show's Avatar that you mentioned and you say it's virtual production, can you sort of break down the pieces? It's like, I know there's motion capture, is there LED, is there in-camera visual effects, or like what are the aspects of it that make it virtual?
So they're essentially what it is Unreal Engine environments. And then we have avatars that we've developed and with our own in-house AI driving the avatars based on people that could remotely join by Zoom or something else on their phone, on their computer. So the show is like a late night talk show with hosts and guests. And they're each just joining from wherever they are, and their video feed drives their avatar inside of this virtual environment. And eventually, initially, it's going to go on air in about 70 million homes in May. But soon after that, the idea is to have it be a real-time metaverse where people can join from their device as a member of the studio audience in real time and be able to interact. And so with that, we're going to be integrating some AI, motion capture, as well as all the tools of Unreal Engine. And still a lot of development to be done between now and then, but it seems like every couple of weeks there's a new version of some AI-driven mocap platform that comes out. So it's really exciting testing these and sharing ideas with people about where this is all going.
And is the AI your own proprietary technology, or can you name check some of the companies that you're using?
Specifically for the Zavatar, it is our own technology that our team's developing. But we do work with other AI, like Stable Diffusion. We use for some of the textures and some backgrounds. And we actually use, I know this is all about AI. So the other area we use that a lot is for concept art. For the productions, our productions that we do here are not, multi-week, multi-month productions. They're generally much shorter. So it's really important to get buy-in from our clients on what environments we're trying to create for them. So we found that using a tool like Stable Diffusion is great for concept art, and to give them a few different options. They want more of this, more of that. We can quickly update that. And then once we narrow in on what they're really looking for, then we use that as a basis for our artists within Unreal to go ahead and create everything.
And Evan, I know you guys do a lot of mocap. Are you using AI in that or in other fields?
So in actually quite a number of fields, and one of the things that you asked earlier was also about type of technology. So we're using a number of AI-assisted motion capture solutions, Capture, Move AI, for a number of different purposes internally. But also we're taking the time to build our own systems on top of that. So we've seen a lot of gaps in workflows that we're actively developing ML pipelines to solve for. So things related to, how we build new types of data, how we integrate data into new infrastructure, and also some of the other tools which we're currently working on, which aim to broaden overall the technology availability to everyone. A lot of it's based on ML that we've seen could be built very simply for our use case, but could also, vastly improve the workflows. And a lot of it is also, not to name drop here, but powered by being able to take a lot of our computational power on a Z8 workstation and then actually build models that can infer on device for anything to run on iOS or Android, or even, on game consoles as well.
Thanks for the name drop, Evan. Mariana, let's go back to you. And where does AI come into your workflows?
Of course, I could not find the mute button for some reason, because why not? So actually, I'm gonna discuss some of the AI focus at the mill, because I can talk a lot more about that specifically. And with the mill, they're really doing a lot of research and development for post VFX and computer vision, as well as deep fakes and text-based and LLMs. Sorry, I needed a cough drop. Apparently, I decided to have a cough fit just now. So yeah, and of course, all of these are being used for rotoscoping, for deep fakes specifically, for de-aging or aging, and bringing people back to life, of course, and then for scripts and decks, as well as story treatments and decision trees and brainstorming. And then there's also like gesture recognition, object detection, pose recognition, body tracking. And of course, they're also using, if we, since you like the name dropping, they are, some of the tools that the AI tools that the creatives are using, as of course, Midjourney and Runway. They're also testing Wonder Studio, Kyber, and Dream Studio, I believe.
Was that a question? Sorry.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's affirmation.
Yes. Great.
Sorry, I just feel the cough coming.
No, I will let you go and
people.
cough, and then we'll move on to Jim. Jim, you're not going to cough, are you?
No, I did that earlier.
Okay, good. So yeah, where are you in the AI matrix?
I've been lucky enough to beta test and give some feedback early to a bunch of these different platforms. In the past 2 years, actually been able to implement some of these platforms on some feature films and TV shows and projects that I've worked on. Also, previous studio being at Dimension and DNEG, there's a big research division there. So a lot of the implementation of all the text to image, text to 3D, text to video, LLMs, LVMs, all these different modalities of AI with computer vision and machine learning help solve some problems, but then they bring up others. As mentioned, Evan said, there's gaps. So there's currently is any one of these names that we've mentioned of different companies, your Midjourneys to your Dallys to your Stable Diffusions to kind of pick your flavor or modality of AI, having a quality level that's good enough. So there's a level. Is it good enough for post viz? Is it good enough for previs? Is it good enough for tech viz or any of the vizzes? Is it good enough for ICVFX? I think we hit certain ceilings with the current methods and modalities where we can see the breadcrumbs. Oh, this time next year, if we have the same conversation, we're going to be exponentially further down the road of getting, layout tools that are good for VAD that will be able to generate the pixels for a final pixel or for in-camera visual effects. Same thing that would go for tools like, Capture or Move AI, and other tools that are out there for markerless mocap and volumetric capture, or even for avatars. So I think being able to play with a lot of these is one thing, but then actually being able to implement them into a working pipeline for a project or a show, there are those gaps that Evan had mentioned, is like how much custom or art time do you have to do on top of what comes out of Midjourney or what comes out of Stable Diffusion or what comes out of Runway. For feature film, there is a different level that needs to be put, and there's definitely, are you doing a project that's more stylistic than it is photoreal? The photoreal is kind of in that space of like, hey, Uncanny Valley, can a Ready Player Me, type of avatar be ready, for integration into like UEFN or into something like that. And I think there's definitely where these tools fit in place for the style project that you're doing. They definitely fit and they're definitely usable for today, especially when you start talking about, things with NeRFs and Gaussian splatting, between NVIDIA tools like Neuralangelo, and being able to process things, on either on-prem or edge servers that kind of alleviate having to need very expensive sets of render nodes. Being able to move that onto the cloud with both CPU and GPU is what a lot of us have been looking for. We just have to kind of figure out to the security bridge of being able to put all this content and IP on different controlled servers to be able to process all this stuff for us in real time.
Something that you mentioned about is it good enough is where it's great maybe for concept, but are we there at final pixel? Is it good enough quality wise, but also is it good enough like clean AI wise? Obviously there's been a lot of conversation this year in particular about artists being credited for their work that is then used to train models. So how much is that an issue in a day-to-day work environment, Jim? And
I think it's a big one, especially for those of us that either work with studios directly or at studios like Mariana and some of our other guests here. There are definitely legal talks that have to happen between the IP owners, the studios, and then the vendors that are involved, because there are definitely security issues that can come up and copyright issues. If you're generating things out of platforms from like Midjourney or Stable Diffusion, DALL-E, and all of that, the trained data does not have kind of like the blockchain does, a marker that says, hey, these pixels and this trained data came from X space or this artist, and this artist gave their permission or their consent to that data to be trained on that, versus what a lot of people know as data scraping. It's a very big conversation and topic. There's obviously rolling litigation that's going on, and there is rolling regulation that's being looked at for this stuff. So there are studios that will mandate you can use some of these modalities and platforms up to a certain level, but it might only be for previs and TechViz, or you might have to obtain a commercial enterprise license with that platform that they can guarantee the studio and the lawyers what checks and balances are there to make sure that, hey, this stuff was sourced ethically, like Adobe Firefly and a bunch of other platforms that are looking to do ethical trained data sets out there. So it's kind of an evolving story to pay attention to, of like, be aware of where the data is sourced from, if you can track that back, because that's one big thing. A lot of us do this with VAD and just content generation as a whole, is usually you're handing over your data sets, and you are handing over basically a document to the studios as a vendor or as a soup, making sure you're saying, hey, if I got this from the Epic Marketplace, here's my EULA agreement or my license agreement that I, paid for this, I licensed it, and you can track that metadata across a project.
I think, Matt, the reason I brought you into this conversation, I'd like to hear your perspective as an independent, and particularly just hearing what Jim was talking about. Where do you sit on the AI spectrum?
So the only AI I'm using right now is less, I think, visual. Would be pretty much like voice to text on like Instagram or TikTok. I talk, it instantly transcribes it, puts the video version of that up there. And as a solo, I probably wouldn't really start using any like generative AI for images or 3D models until it was that seamless as like a consumer. I don't really have like the R&D time budget to test these things commercially. Really dubious to like, oh, let me generate something from Midjourney and use it in a commercial game. I'm not gonna find out legally if that's cool or not. So I just like, I watch it. I'm not really using it. But as a solo artist and a developer, anything that's going to speed up creation process, like retopology, skinning, things like that, or even like concepting, maybe like basic ArcViz that maybe I don't have time to model, I will 100% use it. It should help. Every time something like that happens, I'm able to produce more, focus on the stuff that I like. But until it's seamless, like Jim was saying about like, Adobe Firefly, and I don't have to worry about the sourcing, until there's like a seamless, like pretty easy and legally clear way of using it, I pretty much am not able to use it in a commercial project.
Yeah, fair point. And then in terms of your content yourself as an artist generating content, like, are you able to protect your own material from not being unethically used, or is that a bit of a Wild West at the moment?
I don't think I can. I don't personally contract or work for companies. I mostly make a product and sell direct to customer for the most part. So it's not as much of a threat to me, or at least I don't see it as one. But I have nothing in place to try to protect what I'm making. Generally, when I produce content, I would like it to be shared. I don't know if I want it shared through Midjourney necessarily, but generally anything I put out, it's, I try to be like okay with it being like reshare. Like you produce a video, people are gonna cut it up and use it in different things, and I'm, I have no control over that. So I guess generally I'm okay with it at this point.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, Darren has already talked about a project that they're working on, Zavatar. Mariana, are you able to talk about any projects that you've worked on or are working on that maybe show this virtual production AI intersection?
No, not really, unfortunately, because most of all the projects that we're working on, they're all not going to be out anytime soon.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Watch this space is what you're saying.
Yes.
And it may well be the same for Evan and Jim. Do you have any projects that you can talk about?
Stuff that's been announced, yes. Finished up, even though it's in post-production, but working on a follow-up Robert Zemeckis film called Here with Kevin Bailey and Don Burgess, which the good friends at Metaphysic were using their amazing technology. If we're talking about deepfakes and AI machine learning, as well as virtual production techniques, and that was done when I was at Dimension and DNEG. Got Avatar and some other projects that'll be coming out January, February of next year, and then a kids television show called Yo Gabba Gabba on Apple TV, which will be out next year as well.
Thanks. Well, there's some good ones to keep our eyes open for. Evan?
So I can actually make mention of a specific project that came out earlier this year, and it's a little bit more on in terms of ethics of AI, but it was a shoot we did for a film called Another Body. We did a lot of the motion and facial capture work, and it's actually a documentary about a woman who had basically, through a bad relationship, ended up being deepfaked severely online. And so it's a very interesting film, and we got to learn a lot about the story and a lot about kind of the ethics and controversies that come over not only with deepfakes, but all the types of AI that are being used in the public in general. And so I think that kind of ties in interesting from a production standpoint, where we sit on the side of we want to leverage this technology and we want to utilize these technologies to be able to not only de-age actors, but also extend the scene further, go further with performances, and take the visuals to, an increasingly better level, but also kind of the darker, more, ethically questionable side of, well, if we can do this to be incredibly creative, what else can individuals do to be incredibly malicious? And so it's kind of this counterintuitive narrative that we got to see play out as part of being the production staff to actually make this film possible.
Wow, I thought my Facebook account being hacked was bad enough, having a porn star's photo and name put onto my account, but having a deep fake created, that's a whole other level. I definitely want to watch that. It also sounds like you're going a bit meta, the same as Matt, sort of using virtual production techniques to tell a story about a deep fake situation. Okay, that sounds really interesting. I know we've got 4 minutes left, so a quick fire round as your final thoughts as you look to the future. What's next for virtual production? Evan, while you've got the mic, I'll let you continue.
Honestly, we're very excited. We're excited about the ML technology. We're excited about where these innovations are going to go and how they're going to power virtual production. We're very excited the next 5 years for, I guess, what we see what I would call production at the edge. So with this future of technology being released by all these consumer-facing companies, how does virtual production play a role in the next medium of entertainment? Similar to how TikTok has really revolutionized the social media and media sharing space and content creation space, what do these new hardware platforms really give us in terms of changing the way we consume and experience content? And how can we utilize these tools, which are at the forefront of this type of production, to make that type of creative storytelling feasible?
Darren?
I saw recently a lecture by Stanford Professor Wang that was very interesting about AI. And one of the things that he brought up that was really eye-opening for me is the concept of AI FOMO, fear of missing out. And there's a tendency now to find a way to bring AI into everything and every part of the workflow and everything that we do. And sort of what came out of that lecture and had me thinking is that AI is a tool. That could be a very good tool, but it doesn't mean that it's the one tool you use for everything. So while we're looking at AI here for a lot of things, looking forward to text to 3D models that help simplify things, see how that comes forward. But I think balancing some of the more traditional artistry and using AI as a tool, and not just thinking AI is going to kind of take over all of these creative aspects of the production. but very exciting to see how it moves forward.
That's a bit like the conversation we've had around LED walls. Just because you can doesn't mean that you should.
Yeah, we still have our green screen and use it a lot too.
Mariana, last thoughts.
Yeah, I could not agree more with Darren, because ultimately, you know, whatever the technology is just in addition to, not a replacement of. So for us, really, if we can have real AI fully assisted rotoscoping and just seeing the advancements in, you know, rendering and just like a lot more integration with, you know, virtual production technologies across all of the different industries. I mean, that to me, the future is like what really excites me about it.
Thanks, Mariana. And Matt?
I'm excited about Unreal Engine Fortnite UEFN and like its eventual merging into what would probably be like Unreal Engine 6. So it's a bit of a platform, kind of like Roblox. And you know, at that point, I hope that licensing of music, licensing of AI, data sets, all that stuff's handled by a bigger company than me. I don't have to deal with it. And they make cool tools that I can, you know, do what I can with, you know, let them handle that and have a cool platform that I can build the stuff that I like to build and get it out to people.
Great. And then Jim will give you the final word.
Oh, thanks. Well, as you mentioned before, LED walls or LED volumes are one aspect of virtual production. There is a whole umbrella and of tools and practices and methods underneath, ICVFX and virtual production as a blanket term. I'm hopeful or excited, as well as Matt. Unreal Engine is a hub for me. I like that it reaches out to so many bridges and so many other tools. But I'm also hopeful that we may see capture technologies advance with more computer vision and machine learning, where instead of having to use 106 cameras for volumetric capture, I could use one camera using things like NeRFs and Gaussian splatting, where I can capture from one point but have all the data from RGB data, depth data, texture data, all of this. So I'm hopeful for AI and machine learning, computer vision to augment capture devices in the future.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for joining this conversation. As the last panelists were saying, we could continue, but I know there's another exciting panel coming up. I can see the speakers. So back to you, Philip.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Indeed, a very, very interesting conversation about ethics, about use of AI, about moving it forward. Can't wait to hear what's coming next.